Democracy of January 9, 2023. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the topic of this special order.
Without objection.
I'm grateful to be here tonight to talk about some of the key pieces of legislation House Republicans are championing this week, from fighting President Biden's unfair student loan program to protecting consumer choice in purchasing a vehicle to holding universities accountable for their influence from foreign adversaries. We are laser focused on putting Americans' interests first. And now I yield to the chair. And I would now like to introduce my colleague from Kansas, Mr. Tracey Mann, Representative Tracey Mann.
I want to thank my good friend, the Vice Chair, and thank you for hosting this special order with me here tonight. I appreciate you and others standing here to highlight House Republicans' wins and to advocate for our conservative values. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to discuss the problems America is facing and what Congress must do to get this country back on track. Our grandchildren deserve to live in a country that still stands for freedom, and I serve in Congress to work towards building that future. Freedom tomorrow means upholding the constitutional rights of all Americans today. That's the lens through which I view my job in Congress and the measuring stick I use for every piece of legislation I consider. I've highlighted the path forward in my 4-part commitment to the big first and House Republicans' commitment to America. Number 1, Congress needs to create an economy that's strong. According to the Congressional Budget Report, America is $33.5 trillion in debt, and the federal government is deficit spending more than $1 trillion every year. Our energy independence is eroded, small businesses are laboring under burdensome regulations and taxes, and rampant inflation is a tax on everyone. We need to end Washington's spending addiction by balancing the budget, growing the economy, curbing inflation, and decreasing federal spending. We need to cut red tape and burdensome regulations for agriculture producers, business owners, and for all Americans. We also need to preserve the family-owned farms and small businesses throughout our country. Earlier this year, the House passed the Limit, Save, Grow Act to reduce government spending, reclaim unspent COVID relief money, and promote pro-growth economic policies. The House and Senate passed my resolution to prohibit the listing of the lesser prairie chicken as endangered or threatened. The House and Senate also passed a joint resolution to prohibit President Biden's Waters of the U.S. rule from having the force of law. A strong economy is good for everyone, the whole supply chain, businesses, parents, students, everyone. Ensuring a strong economy remains our commitment. Number 2, this Congress needs to create a nation that's safe. Violent crime is on the rise, drug addiction is spiking, and many parts of our country are in chaos. Meanwhile, we're still hearing calls from Washington Democrats to defund the police, and the Biden administration is failing to address our open southern border, where fentanyl, criminals, and people caught up in human trafficking rings flood into our country. We need to defend America's national security and food security. We need to support our troops and invest in efficient, effective military. And we need to secure the border, stop illegal immigration, end the fentanyl crisis, and support the police. We also need to reauthorize strong agriculture trade legislation, negotiate new international trade agreements, support global food security legislation, promote U.S. goods, and stop wars before they start. This year, the House passed the National Defense Authorization Act and the Department of Defense Appropriation Act to support our troops. House Republicans passed the Secure the Border Act to finish construction of the wall at the southern border, and the Schools Not Shelters Act to prohibit the use of public schools for housing illegal immigrants. We passed the Halt Fentanyl Act and a resolution expressing support for local law enforcement officers and condemning efforts to defund or dismantle local law enforcement agencies. While we all want to live in a country where we can lay our heads on a pillow at night knowing that we live in the safest, best country in the world. Number 3, Congress needs to create a future that's built on freedom. As I meet with Kansans, I hear concerns about big government, sweeping executive orders, and infringements on the basic rights enshrined in our Constitution. We must preserve America's constitutional freedoms that protects the lives of unborn children, and their mothers. We need to educate students in American history and civic engagement. We also need to improve access to rural health care, including access to telehealth services. We must support those who fought to defend our freedoms by improving accountability and transparency at the Department of Veterans Affairs and working to reinvigorate civilian life after military service. House Republicans passed the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act to penalize healthcare practitioners who fail to provide care for an infant that is born alive from an attempted abortion. I sponsored 3 pieces of legislation that would modify the Biden administration's rulemaking to prohibit funds for abortions and abortion referrals. The House passed the Parents' Bill of Rights to ensure that rights of parents are honored and protected in America's public schools. I sponsored the States Handling Access to Reciprocity for Employment, or SHARE Act, which would improve the current licensing process for healthcare providers and increase the number of licensed providers able to serve communities across state lines. We passed the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriation Act and the Veteran Entrepreneurship Training Act, which would codify the Boots to Business program, a training course administered by the Small Business Administration through which veterans and their families learn the fundamentals of business management. America is the strongest, most free nation in the world because our founders declared that our freedoms do not flow from the government or a king, but from God, who created us all with inalienable rights. 4, Congress needs to create a government that's accountable. Congress has the responsibility to conduct both rigorous oversight of the executive branch and investigation into possible corruption and criminal activity within the federal government. We need to rein in the White House abuse of power, hold Washington accountable, end the president's war on fossil fuels, and empower domestic producers to restore American energy independence. The House passed the Reduced Exacerbated Inflation Negativity Impacting the Nation, or RAINS Act, which would require the president to provide an inflation impact estimate with respect to executive orders. I also sponsored the More Accountability is Necessary Now Act, or the MAN Acts, 6 pieces of legislation, which I do every Congress, which would require the president to report to Congress on executive orders. The House passed the Lower Energy Cost Act, which would increase the production and export of American energy and reduce the regulatory burdens that make it harder to build American infrastructure and grow our economy. Through the legislation we all support, I've worked to unleash American energy, cut tax and red tape, secure the border, and investigate the scandal and corruption surrounding President Biden and Hunter Biden. I'll always stand for freedom in the face of government overreach, because whether you're a parent, a child, born or unborn, a student, a farmer, or a small business owner, you don't need the federal government trying to control your life. Serving as the representative for the Big First District in Kansas continues to be the honor of a lifetime. There's a lot of work left to do, but with prayer and hard work, I really believe that the greatest days in this nation are yet to come. Thank you for doing this special order hour. Next, I'm going to yield 3 minutes to, and now yield my time back to Representative Blake.